I just want to welcome you to Funding the Future podcast. My name is Dr. Randy Dirks, and I've been in the professional fundraising sphere for about 25 years, and just grateful for this opportunity that we can connect with presidents of nonprofits and fundraising executives and leaders that work in the nonprofit world and just add value to them. Today, my guest is Patrick McBane, and Patrick, or Patty as he goes by, has quite a diverse experience, about 20 years in marketplace solutions, and then has an extensive time working in leadership development, transformational leadership in several African countries. So he brings some excellent background and experience. We're going to go a range of topics on leadership, and certainly one of them toward the end is how do you give effective feedback to people on your team? And so welcome, Patty. And why don't you just take a couple moments and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you. Randy, thank you for the opportunity today. So thankful for a moment to just share. And, I have probably a couple hats that I wear, as you just shared briefly, but the most, if you will, enjoyable, thankful hat that I wear is I'm a husband of Leslie. We are going to head towards our 45th year of marriage. And that has unique impact because of the fact that I was 19 years old when we got married, and that has shaped who I am as a man, who I am as a leader, and certainly impacted my spiritual faith side of who I am as well. You mentioned the two entities and transformational leadership, again, over the last 20 years, with a unique background that also includes international teaching, manufacturing labor, technology sales, retail management, and then vocational ministry. So an eclectic background in many ways, but also one that has given me a lot of experience in the roles that I play now as the executive director and founder of Marketplace Solutions, and then the consulting practice where I come alongside of leaders in organizations and help them develop leadership culture. But the biggest time emphasis and what I put most of my energy towards is the nonprofit work in Marketplace Solutions, where we take transformational leadership, a proprietary leadership training, and we essentially develop leaders, not just here in the U.S., but all around the world. And for the last 12, now going on 13 years, we've been developing leaders on the African continent and in Asia and been seeing incredible results. So super thankful to be able to do what I get to do. I've pinch myself every once in a while when I wake up and I go, how did I get here? But in the end, very thankful. And again, along with my beautiful wife, Leslie, I have 2 daughters and 5 grandchildren between the 2 of those daughters. So yeah, pretty
Wonderful.
blessed man. Yeah.
That's so good. Love to hear your story. Well, we're going to delve into that whole topic of transformational leadership and dig at it in a variety of ways you've had experience in. We often talk about transformational leadership in organizations, and particularly in nonprofits, and sometimes in the nonprofit world, not always, but sometimes we promote our best fundraisers into key leadership roles. Now, they may be brilliant and great in donor cultivation, but that doesn't automatically transfer over into leading a team of people. Well, thinking about that, what do you think would be one of the most critical leadership capabilities, traits that fundraising executives lack? And you talk about teach, train, equip. So we're going to let you dive into that. Talk about that pathway and how that could be effective in developing leaders in the nonprofit world.
Sure. Well, whether you're having great success in an individual role like a fundraiser, or trying to lead a team of those who are collectively trying to fundraise for your nonprofit. In the end, the skills that are critical are both trust based on both sides of the equation. And so, when you're thinking about the individual performance of someone who really good at what they do. And then all of a sudden they get pulled out of a role and responsibility and then put into a place where they're leading others. Those are two different animals.
For
And
sure.
so, the hardest thing to do is, hey, if I've got skill here, it doesn't necessarily mean I have skill there,
Hmm.
which when you refer to the teach, train, and equip, probably the hardest thing to do is, do I actually know what's expected of me in this new capacity?
Right.
If I don't, what do I need to learn? What do I need to what do I need to relearn so that my ability to actually be effective in this new role and responsibility, which in this case is actually leading others into a place of success, can happen? We'll talk about this a little bit further, but long before teach, train, and equip takes place, you actually have to have a vision for not only where you're trying to go, but what type of impact you're trying to create. And so while that in a nonprofit world has a pretty weighty area associated with the revenue and the funds that are generated so that the mission can be successful. At the end of the day, if transactionally that becomes something that takes over and gets in the way of the trust that I just referred to, it could become a challenge. It could become actually something that gets in the way, not opens the door. So I think we're always evaluating where we're building knowledge, where we're building experience, and what tools are we using so that the knowledge and experience can create the most effective people. And again, we're in the people building business, whether
Mhm.
you're in a nonprofit, for profit, or a family, we're building people all the time. And probably one of the greatest things to think about is, how am I going to build the people I'm now leading?
Yeah. So critical. And while you were talking, it reminded me of what a coach does. A coach sees capability and sees strengths and sees areas where growth needs to happen. And when you
Mm,
think of the nonprofit world, really the president in elevating people to new roles really needs to take a role of a coach. And that sometimes is a little challenging to say, okay, I'm going to watch, observe, give input, give
mm.
insight, release people. We'll talk a little bit maybe more about this later, but yeah, great insight. Well, you mentioned vision and mission, so let's talk a little bit about that. So establishing a clear vision is obviously the first step, but in fundraising, there's sometimes a bit of a disconnect between that vision and what we call a case for support. So
Mm.
sometimes they don't quite always work together. So here's a question. How do you help leaders translate that big picture vision, out on the horizon into something that empowers frontline fundraisers so they can make compelling asks? What would you say needs to happen there?
Yeah, that's really good, Randy. When I started Marketplace Solutions, there was a certain sense that there was something I saw in the way of a need first. And many nonprofits their vision is initiated through that need. They're like, okay, if we could serve this need or this group of people by doing this particular thing or meeting that need. So the need becomes apparent, and then the gap between where those individuals who need that need met and where we are today. So that frustration, if you will, helps to build the connection to why we're doing what we're doing. And if we're a frontline worker, the disconnect is often in why they're actually carrying out a certain role and responsibility. The leaders, the founders, those who are in that core leadership team, they get it because they're trying to unpack it and repackage it and create the solution and efficiency in the most productive way. But if there's not a connection in the same way for your frontline workers, they'll disengage. It will become a task. And if it
Well,
becomes a task, eventually they're going to lose energy around it.
for sure.
And so I think the hardest thing to do is, how do we transfer what we have embraced as the vision to those who are actually carrying the vision out? And I think if we can do that, man, we have done a lot. Now, I'll share one more thing. I believe the importance or the bridge between, that is often in the story we create. And if we can create some story, how we, as an individual frontline worker, fundraiser, are connected to the mission that is a part of this organization we're currently working in, I think all of a sudden you've got something that will make this far more effective and make you far more passionate as that type of worker.
Oh, I love the word story.
Yeah.
I've been told we've got two hemispheres in our brain, right and left brain. So the left tends to be more logical, fact, information. The right tends to be more, I guess, probably emotional, visual. So when you bring the story in, like you just mentioned, uh, sort of like with the case, what we're doing and why we're doing it, that creates an amazing dynamic because now you have the intellect, you have the factual, what are we doing, but you have
Mm.
the emotion behind it. And when people, those frontline people can start sharing those stories, they feel it too. And that is what gets connected. So if it's just information and data and facts, boy, that doesn't capture the imagination of the donor. So I love the idea of story. That's so important. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, here's another question. It's the whole question of empowerment, and there's a bit of a tension sometimes that leaders have. We'll call it to releasing team members into critical roles. So often nonprofit presidents and leaders, they can struggle a little bit with that let go step, because it's been their vision. It's their donors, it's their
Mhm.
program, it's everything that they've created. And so, what kind of techniques do you think could help leaders distinguish between obviously they need to have healthy oversight, but then that kind of control that actually maybe undermines people? So, how do you know when a leader needs to step back and really trust those other people to take over responsibility?
Yeah, so good. Key part of empowerment is to think about teach, train, and equip as a form of delegation. So delegation precedes empowerment. And so oftentimes we make assumptions that because someone is articulate, they have the ability to maybe communicate or present themselves fairly well, that they have the skill necessary to be released into something. Well, the reality is, if you are making that assumption without actually seeing the proof, and then the proof becomes something you as a leader get frustrated with, guess who's responsible for that?
Mhm.
You are.
You are, absolutely.
So, along with connecting people to that vision and that visionary story, along with expressing the trust that allows for people to feel connected to the vision, you're now thinking about, well, okay, what do I need to do to truly equip or teach, train, and equip so that empowerment can take place? And it's something that you map out. It's something that's very intentional. You can't make assumptions. You're, again, going back to your coaching analogy, you're sort of pulling back the onion on what's actually there, and your ability to create a safe environment where some of this gets expressed before they're thrown into the deep end is probably a really beneficial thing. And so whether that's role playing inside your team, really good. The other thing that I see happen in organizations, both for profit and nonprofit, is that once we've sort of created these roles and responsibilities, it's really easy for an organization to become siloed.
For sure.
And so when an organization, even a nonprofit, says, "Oh, this is our marketing team, this is our fundraising team,"
Mhm.
so you're all of a sudden you start to move in these sort of silos, and you're not cross pollinating. You're actually hurting yourself.
For sure.
And so, we have a lot of, team meetings that pertain to the role and responsibility of who we are as the marketing arm of the nonprofit or the accounting, sort of whatever it might be. Without having that ability to cross pollinate, we aren't actually going to hear each other because it's a whole operation that is creating the success.
Yeah. When we're thinking of that aspect of delegation, I thought of two words, addition and multiplication.
Mm,
Multiplication really gets the job done faster. When you think of, we want to do X for this community, or we want to accomplish all these things, which is part of the vision. But when we simply start doing little things that are little additions here and there, it's going to
Mm.
take so long. But when we multiply, often through the lives of other people, because we've taught them, we've trained them, we've given them guidelines, and then we can see that vision being multiplied in their lives. Now, I realize that's a mind shift that really needs to happen in leaders to be able to release other people. So love,
Yeah.
love
Yeah,
the,
we could go down a completely different sort of path right there too, because,
yeah,
the need for that nimble, adaptive leader within the organization is really critical for our success. And so the addition before multiplication is also orienting around pace. A lot of times the executive director has a far greater capacity for pace than the people who are actually carrying out the vision.
true.
And so the ability to sort of say, look, let's stay in pace with each other. I ran years ago when I was in better shape, and we used to run in packs.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so someone would move towards the front of the pack and set the pace. Now, whoever was at the front, whatever that pace was, we honored their leadership, if you
Mhm.
will, in running by adhering to their pace, not the one we feel is better. So it actually trained you to sort of go in and out of a different type of cadence or pace.
For sure.
That's really an important visual for the executive leader.
That I love that. Okay, now we're going to come back to the question that I mentioned at the very beginning, the whole issue of feedback, because
Mm,
sometimes that can be a bit of a dilemma, a difficult point for leaders on giving feedback. So one of your steps, I think it's towards your final step in the kind of training you're doing, is evaluation and feedback,
mm,
sort of creating that loop. But in fundraising, sometimes it's really long cycles. When you think of connecting with a partner, somebody you get introduced to for the first time, and begin to cultivate this relationship. I know for me, as an executive fundraiser, boy, there was one foundation I worked with for 8 years. That's a long time. But sort of, it's 12 months to 18 months is, I think, a bit of an average before you start to see somebody really having trust. So, how do you coach leaders to give meaningful feedback on fundraising performance when sometimes the results are delayed?
mm.
So maybe what kind of metrics would you suggest could be utilized so they're healthy, they're realistic? So we're not just focusing on dollars that need to be closed this quarter, but we're looking a little bit deeper in the kinds of things we're measuring. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and one that can, if it's done in the right way, really drive a cohesive team and organization. So, first of all, let's define feedback.
Yeah,
Within the context of feedback, it's information that is either sought or given in order to impact the individual, the role, or the relationship that we have with each other. Now, information is not necessarily all true. The
okay,
assumption when we resist feedback is that this is 100% accurate and true about, let's say, me, if you're giving me performance feedback. Okay. No, it's the way I perceive what is being demonstrated or done in front of me. I may not have all of the other information that makes that feedback completely relevant.
for sure.
And so it's really important for us when we are exchanging information with each other that we don't use it as a indictment. We don't use it as even a voice of condemnation, but it's actually allowing us to reflect and evaluate in a way that my big objective is to get better every day. And so the feedback should impact where I'm going. Feedback should impact where we're going. Okay. So I like to say if you're not getting feedback, there's a good possibility you're not open to it. And
Good
so
point.
in a nonprofit world, whether it's within the team itself or externally, as we interact with our donors, when was the last time you sought feedback? So feedback seekers are transformational leaders.
That's good.
So they have the ability to go to a place where, okay, I want to truly know what you think. And by hearing what you think, I believe it's going to make us better. And so having that ability to think about feedback in that way now shifts what feedback means to you as the individual or the organization as a whole.
Wow, that's so good. It reminded me, I've never done this with a donor, but I don't think I have. But to solicit feedback from our partners who are
From our
supporting
partners.
us.
Yeah.
What's your perception of what we're doing and evaluation and how can we improve? I think that would create such a new level of trust, collaboration. And for that partner, that financial partner to say is, I've got some ownership in what's happening here. I'm just not looked as a check, but I'm looked at almost like an equal partner in fashioning. I know there's cautions that we don't want the donor to be out in front casting the vision, but certainly gathering feedback is so valuable. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, in light of being in the nonprofit world, here's a question. What would you say would be perhaps the greatest opportunity for a nonprofit to accelerate its
Mm,
impact?
yeah.
Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think, what we've talked about already is going to weigh in pretty big. There's two things that for us foundationally are not only laid in place, but they're also revisited and cultivated continually, and that's vision and values.
Hmm. For sure.
And so beginning with the end in mind is a great way to think about not only where you need to get better, but it connects back to why you're doing what you're doing. So organizations should periodically revisit their vision. And I can say for myself with Marketplace Solutions, our tagline, if you will, what we have now become, and again, vision to me is becoming, is significantly different today than it was 20 years ago when I first started.
I'm sure.
And so the ability to actually adapt based on not only who you're serving, but how you're serving
Right.
is really, really important. Great individual as well as team exercise, no matter how long you've been doing what you're doing, is a visionary reflection that really moves the needle. I want to become the type of leader that and fill in the blank. Now let's move it into an organizational. We want to become the type of organization that have everybody on your team do it
Right. Yes.
and then unpack what's in the room based on beginning with the end in mind. Last thing on that values is the values are the way we're going to drive the vision forward. It's
Yeah,
the way we show up.
for sure.
Right. Don't create 10 values, create 3 or 4
For sure.
that move you towards what you are becoming every single day.
Yeah, when I think of values, sometimes you go into an organization, you see these things posted on the wall, integrity, different kinds of leadership development, whatever, team building.
Mm.
And that's great. You need to have in front of us. But if we do what you just said, where periodically we come back and we say, how are we fulfilling that value of being filled with integrity? What are we specifically doing? What am I doing as an employee? And what are we doing as an organization? So it's not just a platitude on the wall, but we're actually assessing, measuring ourselves by that value.
Yeah.
That would be revolutionary, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, hey, I've got 5 really quick questions at the end. They don't really have to do much with what all we've been talking about, but more just you as a person. So here's the first one. What's the best or a really great piece of professional advice you have ever received?
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to go back to the feedback piece. The greatest advice was actually feedback from a dear friend and mentor.
Okay.
And so, there's a difference. Advice considers feedback actually changes, because there's a lot of advice out there. There are a lot of
Yep.
people giving advice. I wouldn't throw it quite in the space of opinions, but feedback means someone has paused somehow in the midst of your relationship to say, I love you enough to share this with you. And so my dear mentor Ford Taylor, who is the founder of Transformational Leadership. He and I were spending a lot of significant time together back in 2009. And he said, Patty, can I share something with you? And I said, yeah, sure. And so he shared something with me. And after he was done, I said to him, well, look, Ford, I've already dealt with that. I cited my achievement of personal growth.
Sure.
And so he says to me, he said, Patty, he said, if I see it again, can I point it out to you?
Nice. Way to go.
You know, when you love someone enough to not leave them where they are, you've got a great friend.
Don't you? You certainly do.
And so I'd rather have someone's loving feedback than their advice any day.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, that's rich. And I know that that experience really impacted you and still is to this day. What a dear, dear friend Ford has been to you. And
Yeah.
well, if we just have one of those in our world, boy, we'll be so rich for it.
There's a challenge for our listeners.
Yeah.
Become one of those to
Mm,
someone this week.
absolutely. I love that. That is so good. So rich. Question number two. What's one daily habit you cannot live without?
Yeah. My morning, Randy, is a ritual. It's a private, it's a sawed off time. I'm up early. I read, I write, I pray, I reflect. I'm a person of faith. And so my time in the Word of God is an experience for me. It's not something I just do. But for me, I mean, it's daily. It is a ritual now. It's something that took me a while to build. When you think about Patty and my personality, I'm not a habits sort oriented guy. There are some people who are bent towards habits and
Yeah.
doing, but my time that is carved out every morning is so critical to how I show up every day.
Yeah. Love that. It's that time that really makes us who we are.
Yeah.
Okay, imagine if you could go back to your 20-year-old self. I know it's go a ways back for both of us. What would be a bit of advice you would give to that young person?
Yeah. So good. So I was married at the age of 19. So
Oh,
as a 20-year-old self, I was a brand new dad, a
yeah.
brand new husband. I was what I call wet behind the ears. I had more failures, built up into those first 20 years than I had belief in myself for the next 20. And if I went back and I talked to that 20-year-old Patty, I'd say the only reason why tomorrow looks so much like today is because you continue to revisit yesterday.
Okay.
Everything that God has for you is in front of you.
Sure.
And if you've had a painful experience in past like I have, you bring that into your future almost every single day. Now, the only way that's beneficial, Randy, is when that becomes a stepping stone into who God created you to be, the condemning voice of what you're not. And so I believe for me, not only has that shaped how I influence others, but I'd give those words to that 20-year-old Patty for sure.
For sure. Well, it's interesting how what you just brought up because that's a great segue to our next question. I want you to think of a failure, something you wish you could have avoided. However, because you went through that experience and persevered and stuck
Yeah.
with it, you really ended up with a greater success on the other side. Just share something around that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, Randy, as a young husband, father in the mid 80s, Leslie and I lived halfway around the world and worked at an international school in the first range of the Himalayas in northern India.
Oh my goodness.
For me, first time I had ever been on an airplane, first time out of the country, first time eating and experiencing a culture that's quite different than the Western culture we have here
Sure.
in the US. So many sort of barrages of first, 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 first. Along with that, there was the fact that Leslie was 8 months pregnant when we got on the plane and flew to. When
Mm.
we were met at the airport, the superintendent of the school actually said to us, should I take you to the hospital or to the hotel? We
Oh my
said,
goodness.
take us to the hotel. Well, our second daughter, Allison, was born 2 weeks after we arrived in India. During the delivery, the nurse inadvertently left a sponge inside of Leslie, and she began to get sick.
Goodness.
And for the next 3 to 4 weeks, the intensity of her illness added yet another layer.
Mm.
My anger issues began to surface because of so many things that were out of control, out
Mm.
of control.
Yeah.
So much so that I actually attacked a fellow staff member and was sat down for 3 months to work on my anger issues.
Oh boy. Okay.
And if that wasn't enough, the chaos and I think I was, because I didn't have terminology for it, I think I was depressed,
For
but
sure.
I didn't really know what was going on in my world. And there was so much about my world that was completely out of control. I entered into an adulterous affair with another woman. So,
Thank you for being honest. That takes a lot of courage.
well, it shaped our marriage. It shaped me as a man. I mean, the firestorm on our household was huge.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lengthy affair, but it happened, and probably the biggest thing going back is the perseverance of getting things right,
For sure.
of owning my stuff, of not just coming clean, but rebuilding trust with Leslie.
Mm.
And the reason why 45 years is such a beautiful thing this September is because every year we celebrate the grace of God, not only to us, but in us and through us.
Yeah.
And we rebuilt something that many people don't believe is salvageable. And
Yeah.
so the ability to stay the course, to
Yeah.
persevere, to go through the hard thing is what really opens the door for transformation. Transformation's a process, Randy. It's
Mm.
not an event. The events that happen along the way accelerate or even out the process of becoming who God created us to be. But in the end, it's worth it.
Right.
It's worth it.
Well, thank you for, again, your honesty, authentic spirit in sharing that area in your life that other people would have avoided
Yeah.
talking about. They would have found something else to discuss. And I'm imagining that we don't need to go into detail on this, that you've had, because you persevered, as you mentioned, and you said this is valuable enough for us to retain this, and I have to rebuild trust. It's maybe given the opportunity to speak into the lives of some other people that have been in a similar situation,
Mm,
and you can say, "Hey, you can come through this,"
yeah,
whatever that may have been.
sure.
Well,
I'll share this
yeah.
final thought here with you because it's so important. It's embedded in the transformational leadership training we share. It's not what you've done or what's been done to you that keeps you bound. It's the lies associated with those things.
Yes. What lies do we tell ourselves?
Yeah. If you can break the lie, you can break through to everything that is in front of you.
Yeah. Talk about releasing leaders, potential leaders, into all they can be because of being bound by lies. When they break through that, they just see themselves in a whole new perspective. I know. Another podcast, I realize we don't have time for that one. Just great truth. Okay, here's the last question. What's a place you like to go to disconnect, to
Mm.
recharge, to relax?
Yeah.
Maybe someplace you do on a weekly basis, a quarterly, yearly, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, we love travel. I travel a lot just with the nonprofit and the work, but we've seen a lot of the world, and seeing the world is energizing for me. When I can get to places where I see the ocean and I'm on a
Mhm.
beach and I can experience the tranquility and everything associated with that beauty, man, that's energizing for me, Randy. And it certainly has been something we've done and try to do on a regular basis. So that would definitely be my tank filler there.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's great. Well, Patty, thank you for just taking this time to be very real, personable, sharing some very tangible, practical skill sets. Why don't you just take a moment to share with our audience a little bit how people can get connected with you? I know you have a nonprofit. Just take an opportunity to share about that.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure we can post my email address. It's patrick@transformlead.com. The nonprofit is the number four, and then marketplacesolutions.org. And then transformational leadership is transformlead.com. And if anyone who's listening today would like to build a transformational leadership culture, I'd be honored to help them move down that pathway. It's a privilege to help organizations get better every day, help individuals get better every day. And if that's a way to serve some of your audience, I'd be honored.
Well, what a delight to have you as a guest today and hear your story, and appreciate all of that. So for our audience, my name is Dr. Randy Dirks, and I host this podcast, Funding the Future Now, and there'll be other episodes in the future. Just want to add value to everything you do in the nonprofit world. So thank you for joining us. That's it for now.